Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, we got one of my favorite guitar players of all time on here, even though he's not very old. I've liked him a hell of a long time. We're with the wonderful Ian Moore. A lot of you guys might know Ian's story. His first record on Capricorn propelled him to national tours with the Stones, ZZ Top, and Bob Dylan. He acted in the acclaimed independent feature film Sling Blade, and Ice Cube directed the video for his track called Harlem. After that, Ian deviated, from his initial blues-oriented guitar sound on subsequent records, touching on graceful pop songs and the psychedelic, as well as British pub rock and deep Americana. His new EP called Toronto and its 6 tracks represents those influences in such a way that have informed his songwriting, but are more likely recognizable as a strong collection of the kind of guitar rock that his core fan base responds to. I will tell you now, I listened to the album. It's great, and we'll talk about it. Ian's done a lot of charitable work, too. He has a not-for-profit. He founded this Artist Healthcare Alliance called SMASH, which is Seattle Musicians Access to Sustainable Healthcare, and has joined the board of NARIS, which is, tell me, I'm going to mess that up.
I don't even know what the acronym stands for. It's the Recording Academy.
Okay, it's the Recording Academy for the Pacific Northwest as governor and head of the advocacy committee. And to give you an example of Ian's work ethic, he had a gig this past New Year's Eve at Auditorium Shores in Austin. It was 27 degrees out and snowing, and Ian delivered the entire set wearing gloves and a scarf, which is pretty damn cool. Over the last he's got gloves on now, as a matter of fact. Over the last 25 years, Ian's released 11 full-length albums, 3 EPs, 2 live LPs, and 2 DVDs. Man, and I just want to say thank you very much for making all the music you've done, because you have gotten me through a lot of difficult times when I was a kid listening to your stuff, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I got to say, I did deliver this show with the gloves on. I don't know how good this show was with the gloves on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I bet you playing with gloves on is better than 90% of guys playing without gloves on.
Well, you know, it's confident. Funny. It's funny because my buddy, Adrian Quesada, who's he's great guitar player, plays in a new band right now called the Black Pumas, but he's in Grupo Fantasmo and Brownout and Brown Sabbath, and he had gone on before me, and I walked over and I said, I feel like I just played the gig with your hands. You know, like not that he's a great player, but I was like, I literally was playing, and it was the weirdest feeling I've ever felt. I would play whole solos without being able to feel my hand. And you know how there's a connection between your brain and your muscles.
Yeah.
That was still there, obviously, because I was able to play the notes, but there was like this something missing because my hand was numb. So it felt like as if, I don't know how to explain it. It's very difficult to explain. It was really, really weird.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen too many times to you.
I hope not. Yeah.
Hey man, let's start off talking about Austin. You started off playing at the University of Austin, and then things really exploded from there. So take me back there, and if you can, tell me how this all went down.
Well, I'd been a musician my whole life. I was a classical violinist from the time I was really young, and my parents went to a lot of shows on a club level. Austin had a really, really great, very community-oriented club scene. It's kind of hard to explain to people if they weren't there, a part of a similar thing, because it even though there was probably some drug taking and stuff, people brought their kids. It was real kind of hippie, family-oriented. So I'd been around music my whole life and always wanted to play guitar. I drifted in the classical world. Picked up the guitar at 16 after all my tendons had been cut.
Well, so go back there. What after your tendons had been cut?
Yeah. I had
you kind of glossed over that.
No. It's a story I've told a billion times. It was actually a really pretty amazing, beautiful, sad story. Depends on how you define beauty and all of that stuff. My mom and I got in a huge fight, and I'm trying to not give the abridged story, but just somewhat condensed.
Yeah.
Everything came to a head. My mom had been sick with cancer my whole life.
Wow.
She was she and I had a lot of tension because of that. We never fought. My mom was amazing, had a great relationship with her. And she basically dragged me across the floor by my hair. None of this behavior had ever happened before. Shit just hit the fan, right?
Yeah.
And I get up literally so freaked out because she just done that, like I'm going to punch my mom. Like I'm just like, what the, And then I realized, this is my mother. I'm, and I kind of stop. And she's so freaked out that she pushes me. And so I fall back, my left arm. Keep in mind at this point, I'm a violin prodigy. I'm one of the best violinists in Austin. Me and this other girl are always jockeying for first chair in the symphony, junior symphony. And I fall back and my left hand hits her wine glass. And the wine glass breaks and the sliver of glass severs all of my tendons.
Holy shit. Blood
everywhere, blah, blah, blah. So I'm rushed to the emergency room. They reattach my tendons, just whoever was the surgeon on duty at the emergency room at Brackenridge Hospital. And I'm in a cast for 6 months. My mom gets sober the next day and ends up living the rest of her life being this beacon of sobriety, largely in the art community, because she, knew so many musicians through us.
Oh, so she was not sober. She was an alcoholic before that, or
it's always a slippery slope defining what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
I will say my mother in the pantheon of alcoholics, I don't think she really was an alcoholic. She would have a couple of glasses of wine a night at max.
Yeah.
But I think what was the reason why she identified with that was because she was dying and she was in a very painful place and she was using alcohol to help assuage that place.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think, like, with my eyes, that she was an alcoholic. Yeah. I think but the beauty of what happened and what was really inspiring to me and something that I feel like I've internalized a bit is she took a negative and, turned it into a positive. Like through sobriety, she found healing. And she really took this sober community, became a family for her. And it really helped her deal with, I think, just a lot of the loneliness and sadness of being sick with cancer. And just here was a community that was really needing healing as well. And so was empathetic to someone that maybe many in the rest of the world were not. And,
wow.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. And I mean, she was an amazing woman. She became I have probably in my life since she died had 5,000 people come up to me and say that my mom impacted their life through that program. So it was pretty. So I'm in a cast, and then I'm in a sling, and then I can't do anything. So basically ends my violin career. And my mom didn't really like the guitar. She kind of had a cultural thing against kind of rock and guitar and the whole thing. My dad loved it. So when I get my cast off, I get the guitar, and my mom probably feels guilty because of the whole thing. So I start playing, and for a while I'm just kind of screwing around. There's nothing really, I didn't really have any big aspirations. I wasn't like, and then I go, I was going the whole time to shows with my father and with my friends. Music was a big part of my life. And, I was starting to play a little bit, starting to make some strides, but I had this one night where I went to Antone's 10th anniversary, and it was this one year where there were just a ton of guitar players this year. These were all people that I'd seen before, but, Albert Collins, Otis Rush, Hubert Sumlin, Denny Freeman, Jimmy and Stevie Vaughan, Derek Campbell, Bill Campbell, Luther Tucker. Just literally like the most amazing guitar lineup. And Buddy Guy comes out, and Buddy Guy had basically been in retirement. He hadn't played for years. He just started to play again. And he comes out, and I had never seen anything like what he did.
This is in the early 80s maybe?
This is probably, let me think about this. So I was probably 15 when I saw it. So that would be like 83, 84.
Okay.
Probably 83. And he comes out, And I'm not really a big Buddy Guy fan right now. He's a little too kind of like showy, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not really I have all the respect in the world for his catalog, and I totally get it, you know. But I'm just not like going to go to a Buddy Guy show right now and trip out. But that night, he got on stage, and I think he was saying, "I'm the baddest motherfucker in this room." And I've never seen anybody. It was like Iggy Pop and the Stooges playing blues guitar. It was so ferocious, and it was so like feral and visceral, and it just turned a cog in my head. And I went home and stayed up all night and played guitar. And from that moment on, I was a guitar player.
Wow. What a story, man. Holy shit.
I think most people have, you know, one like that, you know, right? There's something that you know, because I don't know, man. I mean, you know, it's like you're good at something, you know, but it's when it sticks. And when you get that big hyperspace leap, you get that thing where all of a sudden you're getting more intrinsic rewards. I don't mean like people tell me I was good. I just mean like it was fun.
Yeah, it felt right.
So when I first started playing, it was just like I was such a good violinist. I was real clumsy. I didn't know how to play chords. It was just kind of frustrating, and it took me a while to get some traction. You know?
So when this whole thing went on with your mom, what was your dad involved there?
My parents were divorced. My dad was going through kind of a weird. My parents, I had an amazing. My life is defined by, like all lives. My life is defined by. I had the most amazing early life humanly possible. My dad was a Buddhist scholar. He was being sent all over the world to study Sanskrit and Buddhism. And my parents, we were hanging with like poets and monks, and shit was just heavy and beautiful. And then, like I said, my mom got sick when I was about 7, and we went back to the States, and the shit just fell apart for me. Yeah. So that is the duality of my life. And then my dad gets into just kind of I love my dad. I have I think he was this amazing man, but he went through a pretty dark period, that partially associated with drugs, but also partially just associated just with the path he was on. He was literally one of the most knowledgeable Eastern studies people in the world. He was, as a matter of fact, we lived with the Thurmans, with Robert Thurman and Uma Thurman, and in India, because they were the two young Turks of Eastern studies. And Robert Thurman's gone on to probably be the most famous non-Easterner associated with Buddhism, you know, in the world. His books are like, if you go, hey, I want to learn about Buddhism, I'm going to go down to, you know, you get a Robert Thurman book, right. You know. So yeah, my dad was kind of like, you know, he was around, and there was a lot of good times. You know, it wasn't like this horrible period, but he was not as present as he was earlier and later. You know?
Is he still around now, or he passed?
No, he passed. It's crazy because the only way I know how long ago he died was by the age of my younger son. So he died 16 years ago, because he died a few months before my younger son was born. Yeah.
Wow, that's heavy, man. Wow. Sorry, it's just a lot of stuff to take in, man. I want to just process that for a second before I ask you the next question. I want to absorb all that.
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, like I said, I'll talk about anything. I don't really have any. I've always been, you know, I got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
It's just all on the
table. It's always interesting to me to hear everybody's stories. That's why I like doing these, because and I'm attracted to the people that have not the straight lines, that have, you know, frankly, the real bumpy lines, that have to figure out how to make some semblance out of that. So I'm just, you know, because that's what gives you character. That's what gives you, you know, fortitude. That's somebody that I could learn something from. You know, so I was just like thinking about all that and what's going on. So you were the only kid, I'm assuming.
No, I have a younger brother.
Is he in music at all?
He's a promoter. Actually, he's living in Florida.
There you go.
he just moved to Florida like 2 weeks ago. He's living in Palm Beach. Works for AEG.
That's so funny.
He was just out on the ZZ Top Fogarty
ZZ Top Fogarty. They were here like about a week ago in Tampa.
He put that show on.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move forward. How'd you get signed? And thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. It was pretty deep shit. How did you get signed to Capricorn, and where did you record your first album, Ian Moore?
So, I start playing, right off the bat. We have a pretty big following. We were pretty bad, in my opinion, but we were young and we were interesting. We were a trio. So I'm super into blues, not Stevie Ray Vaughan, not like I'm into blues. I'm into blues, rockabilly, soul. And I start drifting into kind of psychedelic stuff. I had a young band. We started to get a following, the way you do, the buzz builds. And, for a while I start to tour and I'm kicking around. I get a record deal with EMI, falls apart immediately. And it was my first taste of the record industry. I got signed and never did anything. I mean, it was like the regime change, get dropped. And then, I tour a little bit. I get a gig. I take a gig with Joe Ely. This is a really important part of my story because I was feeling a little overwhelmed with how fast things were going. And I just felt like I wasn't quite ready. Like like for instance, just as an example, I'm a guitar player and, guitar is an endless journey, right? I'm still just like, holy shit, I barely know anything. And then, I'm also a singer. I'm a pretty good singer. And I'm really working on defining my voice and I'm trying to learn how to write songs. And all of a sudden I got this pretty big following and I'm touring everywhere. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys. I was so young. And so I get this gig with Joe, which was lifesaver. And all of a sudden I'm still the guitar player and I played that role in his band because he loves having, I replaced Grissom.
I was going to say Grissom loved playing the same thing. It was like cathartic for him to, if I remember correctly, to come play with Joe.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm in that thing. And then, but the cool thing for me, and I was already a big fan, like I'm a huge Beatles fan and Stones and all that, and loved Dylan and grew up with a lot of people. But, I'd always been more as a player or as a musician, I've been more focused on the instrumentalist side. So going with Joe, all of a sudden I'm hanging with Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and Lucinda Williams and all the best songwriters in the world. So, and I'm playing those songs every night, and so that was the deal. That's the thing that I think really kind of was the lucky little secret thing that a lot of people don't probably realize that really helped me out a lot is that little time period. I became a much better songwriter. I think it's what kind of helped me stand out a little bit from all the other guitar players that were around. And then right around that time, I'm still playing with my band. And I do an audition for Lenny Warnaker and Mo Austin in LA. And they just started working with Phil Walden. Capricorn had just relaunched. And I had a great audition for them. And they go, we know the perfect guy. And they call Phil up. And Phil comes to see me in Dallas. And me and Phil fall in love musically. Like he was so cool. He managed my favorite singer at the time, Sam Cooke, managed Otis Redding, managed like Sam and Dave, discovered Duane Allman at an Aretha Franklin session. He knew. So I was so deep in all these musics that at that time it seemed like nobody cared about. And Phil Walden comes in and here's this guy that's like, knew all the people that I wish I'd known. And then he sees me and he sees this kid who's into all the shit that no other kids are into. So we were like super tight. And they were so excited about that first record. And we made it. We go out to the first little bump in the road for me of what, like lots of different bumps to follow was, again, I'm like a musicology major. I know everything. I mean, I don't know, but I'm really into all the shit, all the old dudes that no one cares about. Alan Toussaint, Bob Johnston, like all the Memphis dudes. I wanted to make records with people that nobody even mentioned anymore. And like, Phil had that was the first time. So I wanted to go to Memphis. I had this, my band was super fiery, super ballsy. starting to kind of get a little bit psychedelic. We're starting to get really into like a lot of the late 60s stuff. And we had this really cool, almost like garage rock thing going, but playing blues.
Yeah.
And Phil, because he was older and because he wasn't really good at compromise and at like working well with people, he was kind of one of those guys that I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it, boy. So he's like, he made us record in Nashville. So the compromise was we recorded with Barry Beckett and Justin Ebank, who are brilliant.
Yeah.
Wasn't the sound I was going for. But I learned a lot. I'm grateful to have been with them. That first record, I was a little embarrassed about because it was just too slick for where I was at. It just wasn't my trip. And it was frustrating because that was the record that came out. I love the songs. I like the record. I don't like hate it. A lot of people think I hate it. I don't hate it. I just was frustrated because the vision I had for it was a little bit more like what Jack White tried to do like 10 years later. I'm not saying I'm that, he's way more like he's who he is, whatever. But I had a vision.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And the record that came out, even though a lot of people loved it, wasn't really the record that I heard. And, when I talk to young people, because a lot of people give the opposite advice. I always say, look, I get it. You think when you compromise in the music industry, it's very different from compromising in other industries in the world. I don't think it's true that you get your foot in the door and then you can do what you want. That's what everyone told me. I don't think that's true. I think that you have to define who you are right off the gate. A guy that was a contemporary of mine that I was very close with, Kenny Chesney, he did that for him because the reason Kenny's so successful is because he's a little corny, right? But he's awesome at it. And he occupies the space that works for him, and it's the right space for him. So he defined the right space for him, and it worked. I tried to do it. I didn't quite believe. I didn't have enough confidence in myself on that first record. I fought a little bit, but consequently, I've been having to do a lot more fighting down the road. Whereas if I had done that fight a little more successfully on that first record, I still think everybody would have loved it. I think it would have had the same impact. Like all the people, like you're saying, you really loved it. I don't think anybody would listen to it and not liked it.
Yeah.
I think it would have been. So that happened, and that really set the tone for then the battles that happened in the records following.
So it was almost like bittersweet making that record in a sense.
I would say it's mostly sweet.
Okay.
I'm just speaking retrospectively. I was frustrated. I was really excited to get a record out. It was, of course, really exciting to see the build, the opportunities that came from it. That was awesome. I was just, you're saying you have a marketing background. I don't, but I do. I knew what the road was for me the whole time. And the road that I saw, it was like I was a street basketball player that they didn't believe the stuff I told them. They didn't have enough faith in my vision. Yeah. I didn't have enough. People weren't communicating that in the right way. That's what I'm saying. When you market a product perfectly, you can go to the moon.
Yeah, but how would you have known? Because I had another question is, as you progressed through this process, did you have anyone to guide you or mentor you, or were you like most artists just flying solo?
Well, I had a ton of mentors. I had that's the beauty of growing up in Austin. I mean, ironically, the guy that I was compared to, Stevie Ray Vaughan, was a mentor of mine who told me, you're going to get compared to me. You have to have your own voice and you've got to trust it. I mean, everybody around me was so awesome. The problem was Austin was so cool that nobody else outside of Austin understood it. And so the way it was marketed, much like Nirvana was marketed outside of Seattle. Now that I live in Seattle and I know all those people and I can kind of hear the stories, I'm like, I totally get that. Because Austin, we had this amazing thing that was not about Stevie Ray Vaughan. And we all loved him. We all, Doyle say the same thing. Charlie would say the same thing. I mean, he was amazing. He was an influence to everybody, but he was not the epicenter of where we were coming from. And that was what was frustrating for a lot of young guitar players at that point is is we wanted to give respect to him, but we were being so smashed in this one area that we were, I was constantly, for instance, trying to talk about Denny Freeman, because Denny was the dude that I was really listening to a lot at that point.
Who's Denny Freeman? I'm sorry, I don't even know who that is.
Well, Denny Freeman is the guy that a very, very, very short form version of this, and this is almost a disservice to Denny, but just to break it down, Denny's the guy that taught Stevie to be Stevie and not Jimmy Vaughn. Denny has this he's evolved. He played guitar with Dylan somewhat recently, but he's like this super funky, kind of jazzy guitar player. All that, like when Stevie plays that Couldn't Stand the Weather, that real that kind of stuff. I think a lot of that came from Denny. Denny's plays like that. Denny's got this he's always had this real kind of cool, kind of soul-y kind of thing that no one else around in Austin had. So those guys were all mentors. Doug Somm was a mentor of mine. Joe Ely was a mentor of mine. All these people were telling me all this stuff, but the thing is they're all firebrands. There was nobody in Austin at that point that was going, this is how you navigate a record deal. And nobody really understood, people were giving me a lot of advice. A lot of the advice I was getting from business people just didn't really work for the route I was going. I mean, if I could manage a kid in the same circumstances, I could help them navigate that space. But there just wasn't. It was a weird space to try to figure out. And the people close to me, my manager, they did their best and they tried really hard. And there was a lot accomplished, but I knew that it was a house of cards the whole time.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. That's amazing. So they basically wouldn't allow you to fulfill your vision of what you wanted to have have the record look like in many ways.
Yeah. And then, once that juggernaut got started with that marketing thing, it's interesting as an artist when you're in a defensive position trying to define what you do, everything's about synergy, right? And it's about energy and working together. And, I ended up I was just fighting a lot. I was fighting in the press, trying to define who I was, trying to say, and I could see it. Like, I'm a smart dude. I saw all the stuff. It's not like new to me. I saw the stuff that's going on. I tried my best to be mellow about it and be positive and really let people know how great, because I really was. It was as challenging a time as it was an awesome time. It was a great time. There was a lot of wonderful stuff happening. Getting to play with my idols, huge ZZ Top fan, huge Rolling Stones fan, huge Bob Dylan fan, amongst many other people as well. That was wonderful, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Just to be really clear, like that was a really cool time for me. It just created basically the template for what then the next quite a bit of time took. I had to do all this other stuff to get to where I'm at now, where I'm much more at peace with this stuff. I basically had to walk through the wilderness for about 15 years to get to a point where I could then just be myself.
So let me ask you this, and I hope you know how I mean this in the most utmost respect. Yeah. When that first album, right? I mean, like, I've talked to guitarists in Austin, just everybody I knew that played guitar, man. When you played, I mean, you've got a great voice. The songwriting was excellent, man. It wasn't like blues, conventional blues. I mean, far from it, And a lot of those songs, Please God, Carry On, Harlem, that was like taking us to church, man. I mean, that was like some very soulful shit. Very soul. And I think everybody was waiting for you to like be the next Stevie or, the next Ian Moore. But what the hell was this? Sorry, my cat is out of control. She's 15. I can only do so much. What was it? The label that like clogged that up? I mean, there's like, by all means, everybody saw this happening, and then it was just like, where's Ian Moore? Kind of.
Well, I think that we went to make our second. Well, a lot of things happened. So Phil, for instance, they wanted me to record with an older band, I had a loyalty to my band at the time, which I thought was a great band, with the Ian Moore band. And the first record, even though my band did play on that, they were not as much a visualization. It was more my vision on the first record. And then, so the second record really starts to echo more our collective influences, because we were touring a lot. And I think we were starting to grow into some pretty cool places. You know, what I always like to say, because as you can imagine, I've had a lot of time, I've thought about these things a lot, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
Imagine if the Beatles came out, right? And they made a record, and the record was a success, or a moderate success. And then the second record, they came out and they started to go towards what it ultimately would be their Sgt. Pepper's and all that. And the label hated it, and just hated it right off the bat. That would have been a very different Beatles.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think what started to happen is my band started to kind of collectively be creative, and you know, we were growing in a way and going into some really interesting stuff. And a lot of the stuff I think that we did on the second record, Modern Day Folklore, predates a lot of really interesting movements in music. Like at that point, there was no My Morning Jacket. There was no, there's a British band I used to think that sounded a lot like kind of what we did, that combined like blues and soul and rootsy musics had not been combined in ways recently at that point that were fresh.
Yeah.
Like you had your older artists, the George Thorogood's, you had all the other people that were older than us, but blues was at a weird space. And then like grunge was breaking, all this stuff was happening. We were on a really cool trek. And I really feel like had we had the support of the label, we would have, number one, I think Modern Day Folklore would have been even a better record, but we started to hit this really, we made that record. That was a really cool record. We made that not with Lenoir, but in Daniel Lenoir's studio. Mark Howard was there. Billy Gibbons was hanging out a lot. You know, Ziggy from the Meters was there. It was really cool. Like, and you could feel, because all the artists, all these people that were around us were really digging on our trip, right? You could feel that we were going in a cool place. And then the label comes to check out the record, and our record guy and the radio guy, and fucking freaks out, hates it. And the problem at that point, then I think my manager, she was confused at what we were doing. She didn't understand it either. Like if you go study like Albert Grossman, who managed Bob Dylan,
yeah,
or like anybody, like who's the dude that manages Springsteen? That was the writer. That guy, whatever that guy's name. If you go study those guys, you see managers that were in simpatico with their artist needs, and they go. And what happened was, I think what we were going was too heady for where Jan, my manager, was at the time. She didn't get it either, because we were starting to hang out and really trying to want to do something that was a little bit more arty. It still was fucking soulful and bluesy and stuff, but it was just, we were just wanting to put a little bit more art, and we kind of started having this schism around us. And that basically broke up the band, and kind of like it made me make a choice that I don't even know I was fully aware of at the time, that I either had to go back and basically wander through the darkness of trying to be this person that I think people wanted me to be, that I didn't even understand what it was, or follow my own trip. And I chose to follow my own trip.
Good for you.
Is this
a common thing with labels? And you're the second guy I've interviewed in about 2 weeks that was on Capricorn. It was almost literally the same story. I mean, this is like, what the fuck?
I try to talk about, that's the thing. Phil was an amazing man. That's why I wanted to say it when I first brought it up, to say how much I love Phil. And now that, I had some resentment to him because he was a total asshole, and he did literally try to ruin my career. He had major anger issues, and anybody that loves Phil or knows Phil will tell you the same thing. He had control issues. It was kind of his fatal flaw. I'm frustrated because I really feel like had he not had that, he would have done some of the greatest stuff in the world. And that was the demise of Capricorn. That's why they got kicked off of Warner Brothers. That's why they went to Sony. That's why we were on Mercury Polygram for a minute. He kept blowing up relationships. He couldn't keep them going. And he didn't know how to resolve stuff. He would when you had a conflict with him, he would just basically go, "Boy, you're going to do what I tell you to do, boy." And I mean, nobody, that doesn't work with anybody.
That doesn't work very well, man. It certainly don't work well with me. I can tell you right now.
But it makes me sad because I really, like I said, I really loved Phil and I really appreciated him and I loved the shared history that we had. And, I do think, that, we did some really good things and we could have done some great things. I think, any artist, has the opportunity to have an arc, and we were on an arc that could have been awesome. I really think had we been a little bit, because I know it's so funny because the buzz on me in the industry is that like I'm this real independent kind of rogue, and I'm not. I am the most collaborative. I'm always looking for people to collaborate with. Like my label, like you could call Travis up right now and ask him. I just want to have a team, and I don't want people to tell me what to do, but I totally will collaborate with the vision. As long as you respect my space, I will work with the label, work with like developing a record. You just kind of have to respect each other. And when you're working with an artist, that means respect the vision, and you can disagree with them, but you can't disagree with them and make them do something. That's when it goes wrong, and the artists that survive that I really respect tend to be the ones that won that battle. Like people like Beck or people like that, where they won the battle, where no one tells Beck what to do. You can tell that he's got creative freedom, and consequently, I mean, is every record he makes going to be great? No, but he's going to come out with some pretty fucking amazing records. Yeah. And you just have to, just like, say you're the guy doing my marketing campaign. If I'm always second guessing everything you do, how good a job can you do?
You can't at all. No. And to be honest with you, I don't work in those situations, and I'm not out of arrogance, out of like, wait a minute, I'm not going to tell you what notes to play, and give me a little freedom how to, write the ad copy or whatever. It's just like reasonable.
But I don't either.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wish it would have been cool if you could have seen those last couple of shows, because I've come out kind of full circle now. And like, I'm a man and I've done my records the way I wanted to make them. So now when I play my set right now, it's pretty guitar heavy. It's pretty bluesy. I'm playing a lot of stuff from my first two records and I love it. I'm happy as a pig in shit.
Yeah.
And I love seeing how happy my fans are. There's way more simpatico happening, and it's because I had to come through these things, and there was a lot of trauma that was unnecessary that never needed to happen, Yes. And look, I'm not saying woe is me. This is like,
no, it is what it is, but it's true. It is the truth is what the truth is as well.
Yeah, and it happens to so many artists. It's unfortunate, I do feel like that's one area, the music business is populated, as you said at the very top of the interview. We talked about artists are these beautiful little force creatures that need to be protected, man. I mean, that's what makes a great artist, is a sensitivity. And if everyone's just praying and manipulating them, we're missing out on a lot of good stuff. We all have strengths as humans, and when we recognize our kind of like the fact that we're interconnected and we work as a tribe, that's when we do our best stuff.
Wow. When you're playing now, are you playing the songs, for example, from the first two records? Are you playing them the way they were on the record, or are you playing them the way you would have wanted them to be on the record, or a little of both?
A little both. I mean, Ian Moore Band I don't even know how to, I couldn't be one of those artists that plays the record like the record. I mean, some of the songs are probably more similar than others. Really the big thing, there were a couple of arrangement things on the first record. The biggest thing for me was just the sonics of it. I like the way the drums sounded. It probably sounds silly and maybe even trivial, but dude, I'm such a huge music fan. I just had a vision, and like, it just would have been so cool. I wish I wouldn't do it now because I'm in a different headspace, and I wouldn't even have the patience to re-record those songs with the amount of detail, because I'm in
Yeah.
But if I could, and I could do it, it would be awesome.
Yeah. No, it doesn't sound trivial at all. It sounds like really like the way it's supposed to be. It's your art.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your art. Why, whatever way you want to make it is the right way to make it. I mean, I would think so anyway,
Yeah.
That doesn't sound true at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for talking about all that, man. It was really interesting. I have like 10 guitar players I spoke to that all had this question, and they're like, we're like Ian Moore, cheering from the rafters back in the day, and they wanted to know, man. So thank you for answering that. You left Austin and you moved up to Seattle. Again, another big change. Is that part of this, like, I need to sort of like reset and get rid of all this baggage, or was there another reason?
Part of it was I fell in love.
You moved up here to be with your wife.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
She was my girlfriend at the time. But I mean, really, I think I can answer a lot of these questions with defining my father, actually, because I'm my father's son. My dad was attracted to ideas. He didn't necessarily care as much about how they played out in the end. He loved the journey. And so, like, for me, when I moved from Austin, my band was the biggest band in Austin, of biggest younger, band. And every single place I went, every person knew me. Every place I ate, everything was free. Everything I did. And it was cool for about 4 years. I totally took advantage of that, and I loved it. And then I started to realize, like, wow, this is like a fucking bubble. And I'm going to turn into this, like, I'm going to be 50 years old, like this little petulant brat running around Austin thinking I'm like the shit in this bubble. I need to get out of here. I need to grow up. I wanted to have a family, but even outside of any of that shit, just straight up talking art, I wanted to grow. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be like, I idolized Jimi Hendrix, and my idolatry of him is not really based on his guitar playing. It's based on his freedom. That dude just echoed growth and change, and he was just fluid like water.
Yeah. And
I wanted to be like him. I wanted to grow, and I wanted to do shit that I wanted to blow my own mind. I wanted to try to, make records that were like the coolest record ever in the history of recording. That's what I was kind of doing. So I was like, how do you do that? What do you do? My idea was that you take things and you throw yourself into the wilderness, you throw yourself into foreign environments, you try new things, you just keep doing things. And moving to a place where I didn't know anybody accomplished all of those things,
allowed you the freedom that you were looking for, a little more of it.
Yeah.
I want to just explore what you said, because I wrote that down. It was really interesting. You said you're your father's son. Your dad was attracted to ideas. He didn't care how they panned out. He was just into the journey. Can you clarify that? Because I like that, and I'd like to just learn what you mean by that.
Well, there's the great book about that young artist who died, The Journey is the Destination. And, I think, if we're talking philosophy of life, when you get stuck on the end game, you're missing the whole purpose of doing anything.
The end game meaning
what you get in the end. So to me, life is about acquiring knowledge. It's about having experience. It's about sharing love and living in the moment and growing. It's about trying and being brave. I believe, I have faith in the universe. I have faith that I will be taken care of. I will not live my life like, we talked about earlier. I am aware of business. I try to make smart decisions. I recognize that I'm a total hippie in the way that I think, but I want to do cool shit. And I feel like the way that I do cool shit is by not worrying about the end. If I write a song thinking about what people are going to think about it, I think it's going to make the song shitty. And I want to emanate this open energy that's bigger than me. I want to channel into this thing that's deeper than me. And I think the way that I do that is by being free, like water, allowing ideas to come in, allowing people to come close to me. Like, you just don't fucking know. Life's so much bigger than we are. And you don't know, you can't, if you're sitting here going, I'm going to do this and it's going to go like this. I think you miss most of the shit.
Yeah.
When you're like, when you emanate good energy, people just come around you and shit opens up and things that you had no idea would happen. I mean, my life has been like, as hard as it's been this amazing bounty of like, when I think there's nothing there, all the relationships I've made, all the things I've done, all the ideas, new music's come in. Like, I think I'm like, my band breaks up, I got nothing. Well, then all of a sudden I make the coolest record I've ever made because it's there.
Yeah.
You know, and the opportunity, the freedom of the journey of walking through this thing is what provided the opportunity for me to do these things. So that's been my career philosophy, I guess.
No, I like that. And I think the key to that is the one sentence you said. The only way that can all happen, when you said, I trust the universe will take care of me. I think that's got to be the bottom of your, the foundation of this whole thing, because you can't, to me, I don't think you can get past anything unless you can have that. That other stuff can, to me, again, that other stuff can't exist unless you have that, faith. And
you look at my father's side, they're Jewish immigrants, a couple of generations in. And I think of my grandpa who came over on the Titanic, right? He had a very tumultuous early life. He didn't ever have the opportunity to have that feeling because it was survival. And you could feel, and his psyche reflected that way of looking at the world. I have the luxury, living at the time that I've lived in the United States, to have the ability to dream of possibilities and to like both artistically and physically, like, and make a career in this way that, I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of people coming over as immigrants around his time going, hey, I'm going to be a musician. Why not? They're going to be like, I'm going to save every fucking penny so I don't starve.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. Thank you. That was good. I learned a lot out of that. Let's talk about Toronto.
Okay.
I feel like we could talk about this other shit for like hours, but let's talk about Toronto. You had a new 6-song EP out. I listened to it a few times, and I want to ask some questions about it. I hate asking this question, but I have to ask only because it really made me wonder, why did you call it Toronto?
It's funny. I almost feel like I'm pulling the covers back behind the thing to say this, because Toronto is such an epic. I was telling somebody, like, when you have an opportunity to use a big word, by big word, I don't mean I mean a word that means a lot.
Right.
You feel like you can do that in good conscience. That is the most epic moment, because most of the time you have to do like these titles where it's like kind of obscure or whatever. And then when you stumble on a big thing, it's like, yes, because then you put it out and everybody can go Toronto, and it hits them Toronto. They go, everybody has an image with it. Everybody knows that word.
Right.
But the honest to God thing is, I called it the fucking Toronto EP because I made a lot of records around the same time, and I flew up to Toronto to make the record. And I called it the Toronto EP forever because I had my soul EP, the Toronto EP, and then the funk EP, all that I made. And then I was like, thinking, and I came up with all these other names, and then I just was like, God, it means Toronto to me. I made it in Toronto. It was fucking snowing like crazy. It was this like, you know what I mean? It it was this thing. And then I stopped for a second. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. And it's really, and it's so cool because all the artwork, because it's such a big word, the artwork is really super hip. I love the bird and it's
very American Indian looking, I thought.
Yeah.
With
that's what
bird.
I'm saying. It's open ended. I really love it. I don't know the next time I'm going to get to say something like, like US or like, or
Mozambique.
McDonald's.
No, Mozambique.
Yeah. Big words, man. It's cool. My next one's probably going to be something like, like that Fiona Apple record that was like 30 sentences long.
Yeah. When the word hits the this. Yeah. Next one will just be Austin with a period. You gotta have a period. I really like the record, like very fast, edgy. To me, it was like anthemic power pop, cool songs, great vibe. I kind of felt like it was a cross between Ian Hunter and Iggy Pop on that record.
Oh, cool.
Man.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thought the song, very good writing, man.
I get compared. It's funny. I have been compared to Ian Hunter, and I am a Mott the Hoople fan and an Ian Hunter fan, but no, he's not like my favorite. But yeah. That's so cool because I love him, and I've been compared to him hundreds and hundreds of times.
Really
lately.
Interesting.
And I think all I can figure is that it's the series of influences and the fact of maybe the style of writing, the way, the things I say and what I talk about. Like, he is interesting because he's political, but he's not. Oh, look at that. You're just showing off because I'm doing an interview. My wife just brought me a sandwich.
There you go, man. how long you, she said, she heard you say you moved across the country for love.
Yeah. And then she brought me a sandwich.
Yeah, there you go, man. That's how it works. How long you guys been together?
21 years.
Hey, man, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good for you. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, we feel that way too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, no, it is. I've been with my wife 26. And it's a lot of work. It's been great 26, but it's work. But you gotta be on the same. You gotta contribute. It doesn't work unless you. Someone once told me this about a relationship, and it was good because I needed to learn something about it. He said, your relationship's like your business. If you stop working it, it stops working. And for some reason, I always remembered that, and I used it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that. Anyway, sorry to deviate from Ian Hunter and Iggy Pop. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I just thought it was very Hunter-like, and it's like, shout from the rat. It was just, the songs were great, really rocking songs. I just want to talk about a couple of them. Sure. Lords of Levy. There's some really good lyrics there. We can't be wrong. God's on our side. What were you saying there? Because there was a much deeper meaning there.
Yeah. Well, that one came, I was sitting there watching a documentary on public television about, I actually need to rewatch it because I think it was about about this guy that went down to Alabama during the height of the civil rights movement. So like mid 60s. And he's from Ann Arbor, and he gets thrown in a jail cell with a guy from the KKK. And they're interviewing both these guys as older men. It's really a beautiful, strikingly beautiful interview because, they find that they have more in common as we tend to do when we open our hearts, right? But the guy from the KKK, he's really ashamed of being in it. He's grown a lot and changed, and he's basically explaining why he was in the KKK at that point. And he says, I was from this small rural town in Alabama. I had no access to people that thought differently than this one way, and I just didn't know. And he said, a lot of the religious leaders were really kind of behind that within his community. And so there was a lot of this thing about God and, God hates the N-word and that kind of stuff. And I was just I kind of started riffing in my head off of the way that, that often is a thing, God and country is often a thing that really is used in a very dark way. And that when we allow ourselves to fall behind that group thought through this falsely identified
in the name of God thing.
Yeah, in the name of God or country. A lot of really bad shit comes out of it.
Yeah.
And Lords of Levy the title was, so what my favorite thing to do with narratives is to marry two things that are interrelated but not necessarily completely linear. And I talk about this a lot in my songwriting things. Like, a lot of amateur songwriters feel like a song has to be about this thing, and then they cram it together. But when you hear great songwriters talk about their writing, a lot of people I've been inspired by, again, they maintain a looseness with it, and so that allows the narrative to create some 3-dimension. So, the Lords of the Levy are actually, that's a term for the people that were the go-between between politicians and organized crime. and they were manipulators of culture. So I thought that was a great attachment to this concept that I was doing, and taking that and applying that to kind of the politicians, to basically tying them to the anchor of their darker thoughts. So that's kind of what that song's really about. It's about the manipulation of societies by people that have more nefarious goals, and how we as individuals then fall into what we could consider evil by buying that.
Yeah. And that was really good. I really liked it. Your writing has always been, like, I don't want to say good because that sounds cheesy. Your writing has always been, a little cerebral, which is good. Just like, I like something that makes me think. Mm-hmm. And your writing has always done that. And the music, your music has done the same. I always wondered, like, I know you've since then probably studied writing, but when you first started, did you study songwriting, or how did you, like you said, I was trying to learn songwriting, I was trying to learn music, I was trying to learn how to play better. What were your early writing influences?
Well, I've read a lot. I really love to read. I read a lot.
Yeah.
I really love great writing, and I just think, it's like, again, going back to Hendrix, man, I mean, his descriptive abilities, oh my God.
Yeah.
For a guitar hero, Jesus, there's never been another like him.
Yeah.
So fluid and beautiful, and just really, I think a lot of it really came from him. And I'm a big Beatles fan too. And just really, the more you do something, it's like if you're a woodworker, you just want to kind of like, you get, I love images.
Yeah.
But the thing is about, I don't feel like I do know some writers that are really cerebral, and I think of myself as really a heart writer. I'm a real heart writer. If it gets too like, if there's, like Lords of Levy, even though it does have that thing, it's a heart song. It's all passion. It's all. So that's the thing. Like, if there's not blood and guts in it, I'm not going to write it.
Let me clarify when I said cerebral, stuff that makes you think, not like, stuff that makes me look up encyclopedias or anything like that, or I got to look on Google for the concept. No, but it's cerebral in the sense that it engages, it's not, he fell in love and she fell in love and he broke her heart and she, it's a little more engaging than that. And I've always enjoyed it, man.
Thank you. Well, and I didn't take that as in any way bad. I just feel like I like cerebral writers, actually. It's kind of more like the way I was thinking about it, and that I've always felt like sometimes I think of myself like, I wish I were more cerebral. I sometimes wish, but I'm just a soul dude. That's really the essence of who I really am. And the songs that resonate with my fans are always the ones where I'm just bearing my soul. That's really who I am in this world. And that's one thing, as I've grown older, I have really learned to respect. I could write the smartest song ever in the history of mankind, and it's not going to work for me because my fans look to me to be me, but to be soulful and to be open. And, my best gigs are when I'm open, and it's not when I'm shredding on the guitar. It's when my heart's open and my spirit is open. People feel that in me. And so with my songwriting, it's the same thing. So like, I'm really, Lords is as a matter of fact, I just was filming a video for that one, and I feel like it's the centerpiece of this record, because it is a good marriage of emotion and some imagery and stuff.
Looking for the sound, really cool guitar. That's another song on the EP. Cool guitar solo in between the verses. It sounded like you were playing slide, but it sounded like there was some effect or something going on sonically on top of the slide. What was that?
That's just like the classic George Harrison kind of double track thing that like Mike Campbell does. It's just double tracked.
Okay.
It's a slide. It's a slide. That's to me, like fundamental George Harrison, like double track slide. It's like immediately, hey, let's get the George Harrison sound. 2 slide tracks.
Yeah, it sounded great. It sounded phenomenal.
I love it. Like everybody in the world now is coming out, as being the huge Petty fan, but I am a huge, huge Petty fan. And I think a lot of when he died, I, like everybody else, I was just went through my own life as a fan of his, because he was like really the one. I'm not fan of much arena rock. And he was like the one dude I would always go see when he'd come through playing arenas. And so I think looking for the sound, you can really hear like kind of it's very 60s leaning and stuff with the vocal round at the end. It sounds like kind of like a Petty song to me, really, Really
good track. Again, with the lyrics, I thought they were beautiful. So open up your heart and let me in, and let's begin again.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Beatles before. There's some really Beatle-esque type harmonies in there. And I hate, and I apologize because I am not in any way, I've said a couple of references in all saying, it just, similar. It just has some similarities. It's not like Beatles.
But you're hitting on an interesting thing, though, that I've always found. Like, I am definitely a huge Beatles fan, and I will never, deny that. I think, as a matter of fact, I hate it when bands refuse to acknowledge really what their influences are.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you get, and I've even seen this with my younger son. He's 15, and he became a Beatles fan a couple of years ago, and now he went through this big Beach Boys phase. Now he's really into the Zombies, and he's even getting into like Hendrix and stuff. And like to me, the Beatles are they're like ground zero for a lot of musical things. And then you just go down this road of once you get into like harmony singing, then you're like listening to like the Zombies and like the Beach Boys and all these great harmony bands that then there's a ton of stuff like. I'm a really big fan of a lot of the power pop stuff that came out. Like one of my favorite bands in the world is Teenage Fan Club.
Okay,
I love them, and I just love the harmonies. I love harmonies in music. I grew up with the Everly Brothers and Simon and Garfunkel and the Beach Boys and the Beatles, and to me, that's one thing that I've always loved my whole life.
Harmonies.
I love them. They just make me happy.
What's the backstory of that song? So open up your heart and let me in and let's begin again. What's the backstory there?
Well, there's a couple of different things. The guy that I was collaborating with a lot, really good friend of mine, this guy Matt Harris, and I, you know how bands always have kind of inside jokes that you get when you tour all the time?
Yeah, of course.
Well, we had a billion, and the record before that we made was called El Sonido, The New Sound. And that was based on a skit from a band, the Mighty Boosh. And the Mighty Boosh are this comedic duo it's just ridiculous. And we just would riff on it and just go down these rabbit holes so looking for the sound was actually kind of an extension of that riff, because there is actually an episode of the Mighty Boosh called Looking for the Sound. And it's this ridiculous thing where the guy comes out of his own afro through the door in his brain and all this stuff. And it's just silly. So that was the start of it. But then when I wrote the lyrics to it, I actually was thinking I got a little bit sentimental about my career, and just I guess now that I've been touring for so long, I love the idea that I've been touring for so long. I love the fact that I'm always looking to open up people's hearts, just like I'm 18. Like I'm convinced that this next record I'm going to put out, going to change the world, and everybody's going to freak out, and the world's going to be better. And a little bit deluded, a little bit, self-obsessed, but it's also a really, really humble concept in its core, because that's what I want. When everyone's singing and everyone's happy, I'm happy. I mean, granted, I'm always the one on the stage singing, and they're singing with me, but you know what I mean? Like that's the thing. Like that's what you want.
No, I don't know that it's diluted. I think if you're, as an outsider, if the guy I'm going to see has that as his, the backbone of his intentions, man. Wow. What a fucking great, how do you lose going to see that guy? You know what I mean? If that's your intentions of, I want to put this stuff out that's really going to open up your heart, that you're going to relate to, that you're going to be able to, make your life easier. God, what's the downside to that?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what I think that's how a lot of artists are. I really think that that's a real common thing. I think there are some people out there that are a little bit more lost, and they're just trying to manipulate their audience into buying their stuff. But I think most people, really want to, they want to make the world better. I believe that, and those, as a matter of fact, if I don't believe that in an artist, typically I don't like them.
Yeah. Yeah. But let me ask you this, believing it and being able to articulate it like that are two different things. Have you always had, like, you seem to be a guy who's got a pretty high level of awareness. Have you always had that?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
From my dad and from my life, and just kind of I've just always been pretty sensitive, and I don't know. I just kind of feel, my dad was a Buddhist scholar. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've always felt like, and that's like, it's good that we're doing this interview now at the end of this tour, because I had a couple of killer shows, and it's like, it's why I do it, man. I'm 49 years old. I spend half of my life away from this beautiful world that I have in a van, driving, loading. I don't have any crew. It's hard. I don't make a ton of money. And man, you get up on stage and you have these nights and you're like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And people come up. I mean, dude, it's my last show was in San Antonio. And I sat there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I talked to people. And the things they tell you, this changed my life. I was deployed and this saved my life. This kept our marriage going, our whole relationship. We named our son after you. One after another, people say how you've impacted their life. How could you not be moved by that? And how could you not want to do better? When you're faced with people and you realize that you can actually go in. I mean, we all want to make a difference. We all want to do something that matters to people and that changes the world in some way. And we all do that. We do volunteer work. We do whatever we do. And, I've tried to do a lot of different things. I've gotten really frustrated at points in my career, but this is where I'm the most powerful. This is the place where I impact people and feel like my energy can have the most resonance in the world.
We always you always have good communication skills?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's great.
I think I had to. I think because I think when my mom got sick, I was so fucked up. I had to figure out how to communicate a lot of stuff I wasn't ready to talk about. Yeah. So it was hard. And I think probably that struggle made me better at talking about stuff, because I had to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then but ironically, the reason I started playing music is because I didn't feel like I could communicate enough with my words. And what I always tell young musicians, I'm like, here's what's awesome about music. Here's the fucking secret. You're sit here with a group of people and you're going to say a thing and everyone's going to ignore you, or they're going to say you're depressing or you're stupid or whatever. You put it in a song and everyone loves it.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
You're Gandhi now. Yeah.
Yeah. You can say all that stuff. Think about John Lennon. If he never was an artist, he would have been the most annoying dude in a pub. Yeah. He's like, shut up, John, go buy me a beer. You're self-indulgent, depressing.
Yeah. Depressing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But you write these songs and it's like, imagine there's no heaven. And it's like, oh my God,
That's really funny. That's a good point. Hey, I want to talk about, I've like your first album, and like 7 of the songs on there are like just amazing, but I want to just talk about 2 of them. It was tough for me to pick out 2. Satisfied. Beautiful song, man. Great solo, great lyrics. What's the backstory to All I Want Is to Keep You Satisfied? I mean, man, just saying that, I got goosebumps. What a great, I mean, just, man.
I got lucky, man. If I could bottle, I mean, the running joke, because that song is the backbone of my whole career, especially with women. I have a female following because of that song.
Yeah.
And it really drove my career. And to this day, I mean, people cover it. The funny thing about it is I wrote that tune. I was listening to a lot of Johnny Taylor. Johnny Taylor's a soul singer from Texas. And Johnny Taylor, all of his songs are like that. And on the back of Johnny's records, I mean, everyone would do this back then. He would have like his astrological sign, and then all this stuff about like,
favorite food, favorite.
Yeah. And like you're selling it to the ladies.
Yeah.
And I wrote that song kind of tongue in cheek, as I remember, of course, still being baffled by the mystical like land that is a woman, right? Like trying to understand, never understanding that women were going to, I had no concept that this was, as a matter of fact, when the funniest story about that song is I wrote it, I brought it to the band, and you got to keep in mind, we were like we weren't like punk rock, but we were kind of like a punky blues band. Like everything was real fast and pretty intense, very masculine, mostly dudes at our shows. Bring it to the band. The guys didn't want to play it in Austin because they were worried it would ruin the gig. So we played it the next night in this small town outside of Austin. It was a small college town. And as I remember, there was, 50, 75 drunk college kids in front of us and 10 women that had been dragged against their will to the show because their boyfriends didn't want to leave them at home lest they sleep with somebody else while they're gone, right? College kids. And so these girls who couldn't give a shit about the band because it's like a nonstop guitar solo and a bunch of dudes, I play Satisfied, and all of a sudden the 10 girls are up in the front. This is how I remember it. This might be exaggerated a little bit, but everybody else remembers it this way too. And from that moment on, that song was a staple in our set. And I just lucked upon it because I don't think I could unlock that mystery of, I would never talk that way to a girl naturally. I would feel like it was too cheesy to say that. But then when I said it in a song, whoa.
That's a rule you just said.
Yeah.
You just said it a few minutes ago. Say anything you want, but you put it in a song and there it goes.
Yeah, I know. I know. But I mean, even then, like that isn't a song I mean, it would be hard. Like, I've even kind of tried to write songs kind of like that. It's just really difficult to say things that are like, it just goes in the female psyche. And I'm not saying every girl in the world likes it, but boy, a lot of them do. That's
a beautiful song, man. Harlem, was that based on an actual experience?
Yes, that was an interest. So again, I'm a young man at this point. I'm dating this girl Carenza, who's going to get her master's at Columbia. She was in Columbia,
right.
And so I go to visit her. Yep. So I go to visit her at Columbia. Yeah, it's way up there, and I go to the Apollo because I'm a huge fan
of
music. And I'm walking all the way from Columbia up to the Apollo by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And shit gets kind of weird. Like there's a couple of, like, I don't remember where all I went. Like I was walking all around there.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some areas where it was like, it's not cool to be a white dude in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
At this point. And I came back and I think, she had this is Columbia. She had I don't even remember what happened, but I probably talked to a bunch of other people. And I was like, it's weird to be in a situation like that where you feel like your intention is so pure and, you're kind of like, you almost, not sound like the total annoying honky, but I'm one of you, we're all this, like, hey, we're all the same, brother. And it's like, but we're not. And, so that's kind of where that song was written from. I'm really proud of writing that song because it's kind of talking about racism. And as a matter of fact, Ice Cube freaked out, heard that song, was so excited. That's why he wanted to direct the video, because he was like, dude, you're like a white rock dude talking about racism. That is ballsy. I'm like, I didn't really think about it that way, but that's what, I wanted to have a real discussion about it. Like, I'm me, I don't look at a black dude and go, you're a black dude. When I look at a human being and they're given an opportunity, in almost any situation to define themselves to me,
right.
As, and I'm sure I've got some shit. I'm not saying I'm a fucking open-minded about it, but I try to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating to be really judged. And I felt really judged throughout most of my life. It is a little, I try to be real careful on these areas because I'm really excited about social change. I think there's a lot that needs to go way past where we're at, but I do get a little frustrated being a person that's really a champion of all things progressive. And then having so many people put me in the box as you're a white dude. You're a dude. and then there'll be people that won't talk to me, that won't give me a chance. They make assumptions about who I am, about what I think, and it's frustrating. So I think that's really all at the bottom of that tune.
Great song, man. Beautiful song. That video, though, that was filmed in L.A., not New York. Yeah. That was like, that's a running gag. You know, and I hate to say I was disappointed, but that was the only thing I was like, they should have filmed it in Harlem, man. As soon as I saw, I know. Now, only people from New York are going to know that. Like some guy in Kansas is not going to know that, you know, unless he sees the palm trees or.
I asked Ice Cube the same question, man. I was like, I think it's kind of a big deal. Should we do it? That's the joke about the video. He's like, you know, it's kind of like the devil makes a deal with you. You know, you got one caveat, right? That's it.
Well, then it's funny. He's got this one sign that says Harlem with an arrow.
I know.
And it's like, at least put it in the same colors as the signs in Manhattan. It was just really funny, but awesome. Just incredible song. I've listened to that song probably 30 or 40 times minimum. Great. You know, just a really cool song, man. Thank you for putting that out there. Were you drawn to the blues right away when you first started playing?
I was into that music way as a kid. Well, first of all the shows I went to as a boy were soul, blues, kind of in those realms, kind of like a little leaning into the cosmic country. There was, you know, Willie Nelson and Doug Somm, those kind of things, but a lot of that very rootsy music. So that's what I was around, and that's what and then when I started as a kid, I was a record collector, and I really, really loved 50s and early 60s music. And a lot of that, as you know, is very kind of blues, and that just always spoke to me. I liked the way it sounded. I liked the vibe of it. And, you know, and then I think especially like when I took up the guitar, I'd been playing classical music for a long time. And what's the opposite of classical music? Probably blues.
Punk, blues, something like that. Yeah.
So I was really attracted to just the rawness of it and just the straight up emotion, I think, really spoke to me.
You talked a little bit about this as far as like having business obstacles. What are some of the bigger things that you've had to overcome or deal with throughout this journey, either personally, music related or business related, that, you know, you feel you've really had to fight through to, you know, help you get you who you are today?
Yeah. Well, I'd say a lot of it is people just kind of let me be myself. I think it's interesting how hard that is
for people to let you really be yourself.
You really have to fight for that, man, in the world. I mean, and not just in music, just living. But I think, you know, that's probably been the biggest thing, is like making my career what I wanted it to be. Like, you know, I have the career I want, you know. I mean, I definitely would like, you know, I'm working on building certain things where I'd like to have a little bit more production. I like to be playing a little bit bigger places, but that's eternal, right?
Yeah.
You could probably have an interview with Mick Jagger and he'd say the same thing. I wish the stadiums were slightly bigger.
I think what you said is really important, because you ask any driven person at any point in time in their career, no matter where they are, they're going to say, well, I wish we were able to do this a little better or a little more efficiently, a little bigger. You know, that's just human nature of driven people.
But I mean, beyond that, I really have fought for the thing that I guess I think I was fighting for the whole time, which is, you know, freedom to kind of do my thing. And I just think that my records are cooler when I make the records that I think are cool. So I think fighting for that was probably my biggest challenge. And I think the fact that I think the combination, the thing that kind of on a real kind of nuts and bolts level that has been challenging in my career is I love simple musics. Like I love blues and soul and kind of ethnic, you know, things that are considered not super cerebral. Like in other words, I make those but I have like a high art mind. I love conceptual stuff. So that's kind of been the rub, I think, of my career, is that I really like simple things, but I put a lot of thought into them and I want to do something interesting with them. And I think, you know, in general, like if you're a blues rock guitar player, a lot of people want you to just keep it real meat and potatoes. Don't mess with the formula. And I just even when I want to do it, I just can't do it. I just don't do it. I'm just me. And there's no way for me to put on a thing like that and do that. And I think that's created a little bit of tension at times in my career. So, you know, it's not with
the labels, not with your audience.
No, with my audience too. I think a lot of my fans, from my early career are pretty conservative musically. Like, think about it. Like, if you're David Byrne, let's use him.
Yeah.
And you come out, you're in New York City. So you start out in New York. So you're in a big city with a ton of ideas, and you're in this cutting edge thing. You're really setting yourself up well to be able to experiment further on in your career. But when you're someone like me and you come up and you're a bluesy guitar player from Austin, you don't have people are not as accepting of you making like, oh, I'm going to go down to Brazil and make a record with Brazil, Yeah. You can, the method you can do, and even it would be interesting because I'm a big Ry Cooder fan. I mean, Ry's like he's like Yoda, right? Like, but even then, he's always done it in a different way, He's like a curator of stuff, whereas David Byrne immerses himself in it, and he is the vehicle. Ry Cooder helps to bring it up. So I think that's been a big thing. And I've seen the same struggle in a million other bluesy guitar players. I mean, when I play with these guys all the time, I remember meeting Johnny Lang when he was right after his first record, and we were talking about me producing a record for him. And his dad heard it and was just like, literally like, get away from him, because, it's like, hey, this formula is working. Do not mess with it, because it's a thing that works. And it's a pretty, like, Johnny's awesome, and I'm not taking anything away from where he's at, but you don't have a whole lot of wiggle room conceptually.
No, I totally get that. It's why guys like, you look at someone like Neil Young, for example, he experimented, and none of those experiments went really well for the most part.
Yeah, but you know what? He's a great example. Actually, I always say I'm a huge Neil Young fan. I need to clarify that. I'm not a huge Neil Young fan the way other people like. I love Neil Young because he's Neil Young, and Neil Young won the Me's of the world over by doing those failed experiments. So I would counter to say that even though those were commercially not successful, those are what allowed Neil Young, just like same with Willie Nelson, to stand as an older musician with the respect of all the weirdos on the periphery. If Neil Young hadn't done that, he would be a very different player. He's so respected, and that allows him to have a great later career when a lot of other older artists don't really have. Like, when Neil Young comes to town, everybody wants to go see him.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a folk artist. Like, I guarantee you his crowd's filled with everything old fogies, young art kids, because people relate to him.
Totally.
And that's that. I mean, Neil Young's been a big inspiration for me. When I look to him and I'm like, all right, you can shoot for the fences. It doesn't matter if everything's a hit. Just go for what you believe in, and it's going to work out.
Well, what's interesting, he didn't do that once.
He did.
He did it several times, which obviously says it was important for him to do.
Yeah. Well, and so we believe him.
Yeah.
He made us believe him. We trust him.
Yeah.
Some people make a weird record and then it fails and they put their tail between their leg and they get, oh, I'll be better next time. And then we don't believe them. We're like, okay, you were just doing that to try to be cool. It's all about it's trust, man. And whatever it is that you do, your audience has to trust you. Yeah. And, like, again, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place because I feel like, if I were to make a blues rock record, just say my next record is just straight up blues rock record, I don't think anybody's going to discount it because I've made all these other records and I've been through all these things. I think my audience trusts me. I think my fans and the people that know me or that have followed me know they trust my integrity. They trust that I'm probably made a blues rock record because I was real into it.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I think that's important. When you look at consumers as a one-dimensional thing, you're not a good marketing guy. Consumers they're complex, different demographics. Some people want the same thing over and over and over and over. Some people want to have their mind blown and they want new. You got to hit them with a new thing. And it's important to recognize that there's different types of people out there. They're not just this one monochromatic blob. You got to hit them where they are. Like, I can feel like where I'm at 49 years old right now, I'm not saying I'm going to pull this off, but I can feel that if I've got a record, I can kind of see if I make this record in the next year or two, it could be pretty successful for me. Because everywhere that I've done has put me to this place where I have the trust of, I have a certain thing. I have a window. I think it's not forever, but it's right now. I have that window. As an older artist, and as you get older, you don't get as many of those windows. There's less and less and less of that. So you have to be aware of it. But that's because of, I think, the chances I've taken. So I go back and tell the people that think I was crazy for making the moves that I made to say, look, it bought me flexibility. It wasn't just, it was an artistic move. It was an impetuous move to some degree, but it also was a marketing move. It also was, I'm going to make these boundaries a little wider, and it's going to give me a different thing than if I had just done what the man told me to do the whole time.
The most important, man, if you're happy with it, that's really, and if your fans are happy, all that other shit doesn't mean anything.
At all. Yeah, that's the best.
To be honest with you. I mean, it's if you're happy with it, if people bought it, if they vibed with it, if they're coming out to the shows and telling you they like it and lining up to talk to you and tell you how, I listened to this and I conceived my kid with it, or I changed my life, or when I shipped off to, go overseas and fight. I mean, that's pretty compelling, data that you're getting there, man. So.
Well, but a lot of my stuff really does go back earlier in my career. I mean, I do have some. If I did a chart of it all, it definitely would lean pretty heavy towards my first couple of records, which is fine. I recognize the other part of that is that if you study human beings, I mean, we have a big arc in our late teens, early 20s where we're the most accepting of new information, and then from then on, as a general rule, macro level, it tends to kind of go off. So, I recognize that people are going to dig what I do, but it's going to take a lot to really blow someone's mind who's been following me for a long time, or someone who's older.
Yeah.
Kids are much more prone to have their mind blown.
Yeah.
Because I go see shows with my kids and I see what they're like. They're like, it's like, oh my God, they're playing an instrument, or like, you know what I mean? It's so simple and binary because it's new.
Yeah.
And then, we're around and we've seen, it's like, oh yeah, that guitar player's pretty good, but I saw so-and-so in 78 and whatever, you know what I mean? Like it becomes much more complex. So I'm really accepting of the fact that people, and dig it. And when they get excited about a new record of mine, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah.
I don't take it for granted.
Hey, if you had to go back, Ian, and give advice to your younger self, what would you have told yourself? And you kind of might have said it without saying it, but what would you have what advice would you have given yourself, either personally or career-wise, assuming you're willing to listen?
The two things I would do is I would have somebody really close to me that really understood what I was trying to do, and I implicitly trusted with my vision. I did have somebody I implicitly trusted, but they didn't that was the thing that was, there was a bit of a thing there, and I would be more uncompromising.
I hear you. All right, let's talk about gear for just a few minutes. I know early in your career you primarily play Strats. Is that the same now?
Yes. Yeah. My main guitar has and probably always will be a Strat, and I have tried to not play a Strat my whole career.
It's a love-hate relationship, huh?
No hate, just more like I just thought it would be really cool to find another guitar. But the bottom line for me is the Strat is the most versatile guitar in the world. It's also sturdy, so when I record, I don't record as much with a Strat. I'm starting to a little bit more again, but honestly, studio, you got every guitar, you got every amp, and I love that, and I use everything. But I have, for instance, a Gretsch Country Gentleman. I took that on the road for a while. The thing's out of tune every single day. It's weird sounding. It doesn't work well with my other guitars. I stopped taking it out.
Yeah.
In the studio, it's one of my first go-to guitars. I use a Tele a lot in the studio. Tele's a great studio guitar.
Which Tele?
I use my
what Tele?
I have a 74 that I've had forever, but Lawler's a really good friend of mine, and so I didn't like the pickups that were in it. They were I liked the guitar, So I put some of his Lawler Telly pickups, and they sound just fucking epic now. It's amazing. I have a 55 Junior.
Oh,
that
wow.
I've used on tons and tons and tons of recording.
Wait a minute. You have a 55 Junior?
Yeah,
Holy shit. Yeah. Where'd you find? How long have you had that?
Oh, dude, I bought that for $750, and they were sequential serial numbers. They were both $750. I could have gotten both for $1,500.
How did you find that for $750?
It was in the 95.
Still, wow.
Yeah, it was Austin vintage at the time, and there were two of them, and I was going to buy both, and I felt that was wasteful.
Where was this? Where is this?
Austin.
Oh my God.
That thing is so. As a matter of fact, Lawler, I think he might have even put out a pickup line after that one's such an amazing guitar. So yeah, I use that a lot. I use I have silver tones so my tour, I'm just trying to think of because in the studio, I just use everything, anything. I'll use anything, any amp, I build amps, I build pedals, I have everything.
In your spare time.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of time lately, but I built a lot of amps a few years ago. I had more time a few years ago. I wasn't touring quite as much, and that's kind of what started me playing electric guitar again. I started building amps, and I'd have to test them out, and then I'd test them, and then I'd realize, wow, 3 hours just went by, and I was testing the amp. Maybe and then I realized that I feel like a little kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so fun when you get a bitchin' guitar tone, and so yeah, I have all my amps are tweaked out in my studio. I have old Marshalls that I've gone through. I know all the different. I mean, I don't know them off the top of my head, but I'll research them and be like, oh, this is what happened on this model, the 1967, and that's why this thing sounds more this way. And so then I'll go and I'll fuck around with it, and then I'll get my Marshall to where it does that thing. So my amps in my studio are just amazing, but I don't take those on the road because my touring amp is a totally different. That's a totally different deal. I did a collaboration with this guy called his company's called Holy Watt Jim, and we designed an amp together. That's an Ian Moore signature, and it's a 26L6 amp that covers a lot of territory. You know what I mean? Because when you're touring live, unless you're using an amp modeler, which isn't my trip, you're just how in the world are you going to, get every one of those sounds?
Yeah.
From Tweed Deluxes to AC30s to Plexi Marshalls to, high watts, and so then your touring rig or my touring rig becomes a how do I get most of these sounds mostly great? And then same with my guitars. So I have a Strat that's a replica of my number one that I just started using.
What is your number one?
My number one is a 62 Strat with a 1955 Esquire neck that I bought off the shelf that way. I didn't do it. And the neck's it literally is one of the greatest guitars in the world. And everybody tried to replicate it. Fender tried to do it, all these different luthiers. I have a ton of them over the years, and I've never, ever had a guitar. And then this dude shows up in Santa Fe 2.5 years ago, and he's like, hey, man, I'm going to build you a guitar. And I'm like, cool, sure. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And because I've had a lot of people do that. And then he shows up 5 months ago with the guitar, not even 5, 3 months ago, and shows up in Albuquerque and brings it. And I'm like, oh, God, okay. Not oh God, but oh, this guitar is going to be okay. And then he's been working on it forever, and I'm going to bum him out when it's not, when I don't play it every night. And then I play it, and it's oh, it sounds pretty good. And then I'm like, oh my God, this neck feels amazing. And I left my number one at home. I've been playing this guitar.
Wow.
First time in my career. And it's just this dude, Ian Bannerman out of Albuquerque Guitar Works. Doesn't even have a proper name on the guitar. I'm like, Ian, you got to get your shit together, man. Because people.
And his name is Ian also? What is it?
Yeah,
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. And so anyhow, I've been using his guitar. I've got a Burley. I think he calls them I don't know what he calls it. It's a Jazzmaster one's kick ass. it's got P90s, he says they're not P90s. I think they're P90. I don't know. He says they're not, so he probably knows, but they're P90S. They sound like P90s. And then I've got a Supro that's the guitar I played slide on forever. I use a Reverend for some open tuning stuff.
Do you have your own custom Reverend?
No, I just use a buckshot.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Reverend, listen, we need to get even more custom. If you're listening, you got to get Ian Moore up there, man.
No, they're super cool. No, and I've just kind of taken the guitars that work the best with the things that I need them to do. And I try to keep it, I try to not have a billion guitars because I have to set them all up. I don't have a guitar tech.
Yeah.
So I try to keep it somewhat realistic. And I mean, even with the amp, I've driven Jim crazy because it's like, it would always be, he's like, well, what do you think of the amp? I'm like, sounds amazing. And I'm like, but how about if we do this? And it's not, and I always say, I'm like, listen, Jim, it's not because there's anything wrong with it. It's just like, I've made 14 records. I've done everything from like, real gritty blues stuff to big psychedelic rock stuff to 50s and 60s sounding stuff to like, and to this modal shit. And it's like, there's no amp that can get all those sounds.
Yeah.
And then like on like a song like Looking for the Sound, you want to get like jangly kind of like AC30 stuff. And I've got a 6L6 thing that goes when you play it, right? That's what the amp does because it's set up to play bluesy leads. So it's hard to get an amp that does everything. So now my new thing is that I'm going to add a second amp. And then everybody's like, oh God, Ian, please just stop.
So you don't have twice as many headaches.
I know. And there is Mike Campbell's career in a nutshell. It's like, I don't know if you've ever studied his rigs.
I have not studied Mike's rigs. Complicated?
So, well, complicated and then simple. Complicated, simple. There's been periods where he's had like 12, 14 amps on stage because he really likes the way, and then they have to get it all where they're equal. Like, because he'll play like a Champ, and then he'll play a 50-watt Marshall, and then he'll play a AC30, and you have to balance all these disparate amps on stage. But that's why his tones are so cool, because he's not doing it with pedals. He's doing it mostly with amps.
Yeah. Is there anybody who like influences your playing that people would be surprised to hear about?
Oh, yeah. Well, straight up guitar player is probably the person who's been the most influential for the last 10 years that probably nobody would pick off is Richard Thompson.
Wow.
Yeah. He's a huge influence. I'm really, really influenced by Eastern musicians and always have been. I've been exposed to a lot of that. I'm obviously influenced by violinists. I really, really like legato sounds. I love like the way EJ's tone is because I love that. I'm not really into typically a whole lot of guys that he might get lumped with, but I love him.
Who?
Eric Johnson.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I thought
you were talking about violinists. So I thought
because he sounds like a violinist.
Yeah. He does actually.
He just has this beautiful, and it's funny. It never sounds like shredding to me. His playing sounds very gentlemanly, which is what I like about it.
Yeah.
I'm not really into the super fast. That's not really my thing. I tend to like, rootsier guitar players. And then I like people like, I do like John McLaughlin, because similarly, I like a lot of, like, I'm a really big fan of, I had a short, I love doing this, but I ran out of time. I was writing a little monthly column for Premier Guitar. It's just their online edition. And at one point I did this thing because I knew it would get under everyone's thing and skin. I was just trying to come up with, and I said why Jeff Tweedy's a better guitar player than Joe Bonamassa. I figured that would get everyone going.
Yeah, that's probably going to like create a bit of a stress. Yeah.
But it was the point I was trying to make is like there's this solo that Jeff Tweedy plays on Hell is Chrome. It's super skronky, but it's so fucking beautiful. And that kind of stuff's really influential to me. Like a lot of times will like guitar players that aren't technically as good because sometimes there's a liberation in that to be more expressive.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
So who would you say like, the top 2 or 3 guitar players that move you the most when they play? Like when they play, you're like, oh, I'm done. I can lay down and relax the rest of the day here.
Well, I mean, of course, Hendrix. Hendrix he's just ground zero for me. There's something about him. Man, it's hard because I like the guitar players for different reasons. Like I really love the Edge. Always been a big fan of his. As far as people that are kind of peers of mine, I think, I love Doyle. Doyle's the guy I grew up with. I just think he's just so him, and it's so funny that, he's doing well and I'm glad he's doing well, but some of the other guitar players are considering the same idiom. He just runs circles around him. And I find it interesting that amongst guitar players, a lot of people can't tell that.
No, I think I saw him with my son down here, probably, I don't know, when his last tour, when he had the new album out. It was amazing. It was phenomenal. Quiet, laid back guy, interacted with the crowd, but what he did it was just phenomenal. Great show, man. Very present in his music,
It's cool because I think, the other guy I really, really think is the other, like, probably greatest. They're both the guys I grew up with. I think Charlie Sexton is truly one of the greatest guitar players alive, and different from Doyle. He's really Charlie is not soul man expressive. Charlie's cool, and Charlie is like he can do anything. And a lot of people don't know that because Charlie's so hip and underplays a lot. And in the Dylan gig, but he is just insanely hip. He's kind of like the Jimmy Vaughn in a weird way, even though that wouldn't hit him right.
Yeah.
He's just super hip. He just knows all the coolest riffs. He knows how to do everything. And he's been playing guitar as long as, he's lived. So two of my favorite guitar players are two of the people that I've known the longest. I think they really are the two of the greatest guitar players alive.
I haven't seen Charlie live, but like I said, I saw Doyle. It just blew us away.
Yeah.
Desert Island Discs, man. And I'm going to make it easy for you. Top 3, no particular order, just for today. You could change tomorrow. Just knee-jerk reaction for right now.
Are you experienced? We're talking kind of guitar-centric stuff.
Whatever you want. No, not necessarily. Whatever makes you feel good.
Well, then if we're just going, okay, probably Soul Stirrers. That's the Sam Cooke gospel stuff. I'm so influenced by that. And then I would say, oh man, that's hard. Probably would be a Beatles record. And then it would be hard to figure because I feel like I always go back and forth between kind of like the Revolver, but fuck, man. Then there's I don't know. It's hard for me. I think I'd end up starving trying to pick my Desert Island Discs.
Your first record came out in 93, 25 years ago. What are the most important things you've learned about you over this period of time?
I've learned that, when I started playing music, I didn't know that I was kind of going to college and I didn't have the drive necessary. I want to be a musician. I've always had that drive, but I didn't know that I necessarily wanted to do this as a career. And now that I've done this my whole life, I realize I couldn't be anything but this. That's probably the biggest lesson because, I started trying to kind of backtrack a little bit and hang out with my family and do all this other stuff around music, like music production, but writing songs, putting out records, playing live, I learned to really appreciate the fact that was my life.
Man, this is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
Oh yeah, that one is tough. There is an easy answer because I like my resiliency. I describe myself often like a punch-drunk Irish fighter that refuses to go down. I'm really, I've been beaten and, I just can't stop, won't stop,
Tell me something about yourself, Ian, that people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Well, I think anyone that knows me would not be surprised to hear anything about me at this point. Is everybody a bit odd? Well, I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like I'm such an open book. I mean, I'm a total nature boy. I love being outdoors. I think, what I always tell everybody about my career is that I think I always love nature, but I think nature became, so nature's breathing in and performing is breathing out for me. So that in the context of a breath, I take in the strength and the power to try to be more intense when I'm downtown playing rock and roll. So I try to really inhale, the bees and the trees and the animals and, all that, the sea and the mountains, and just be around as much of that as I can. I don't know that people would find that unusual, but maybe a bit more fleshed out, No,
that's cool. I like that. Nature is breathing in and performing is breathing out. Person who's had the biggest influence on your life?
My father.
What's the most important thing he taught you?
He taught me the thing I told you earlier about following ideas, but I think the best thing my dad taught me that really probably even as a human, he taught me the power of vulnerability and intimacy in a man, coming from a man. I think that's really unusual. And I think that's, again, because there's a lot of guitar players that we headlined the Dallas Guitar Festival, and pretty much everybody that played on that bill was probably technically a better guitar player than me. 201. But the thing that I have, that I'm not saying they don't have this, but the thing that I do have is I have a openness and a vulnerability. And I think that is really powerful with the guitar.
Yeah. I've tried to teach, that's been like probably the number one thing I've tried to teach my kids, my sons in particular, to be open and to take it all in.
Man, it's the mark of, again, just look at Jimi Hendrix. Just really just meditate on him. Cause I think we get blind. It's like print, we get blinded by how great he was and just how powerful he was. Just think about how vulnerable he was. He dressed up like a woman. He was super loose and free and just said and played, improvised nonstop. I mean, that's scary, man. Yeah. When you improvise, you're going to fuck up. And he did it loud in a power trio in front of millions of people that didn't even understand. And really they were more interested in him as a sexual creature than as this thing. But he refused to be defined. But at the same time, wasn't uptight about it.
No.
See what I'm saying? Like that vulnerability, that's what made Hendrix better than anyone else.
You ever see that clip of him on Dick Cavett? It's on YouTube. That was fucking great.
Yeah. He's so good.
It's just so chilled out, so laid back, and I think Dick says something like, people say you're the greatest guitar player in the world. It's like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just like,
and you feel him. And he, I think really a lot of that, he's just such an inspiration for me. And again, I do listen to him a lot as a guitar player, and he's definitely, I cop a lot of his riffs, but really, man, it's his soul.
Yeah.
His freedom, and just he's so powerful by just being himself.
Yeah.
That's
totally,
really what it is. And being playful. It's like he wears that shit. I couldn't dress like that, but he wears it because he looks like he's just goofing around. He's it doesn't look like he's hey, look how hot I am, or look, it's not like that. It just looks, he's like a little kid, and it looks like he's having fun, and he's playing. It just, everything feels playful. And that, when I do my workshops and I talk about stuff, I just reference playful, ease, water, playful, because that's what it is, man. That's where the power is at. When you don't fight, when you sit here and you're like, I'm going to be the best, people are going to know my name. You can hear that in the music. It sounds like that. You sound like that when you're playful and you have joy, and it brings everyone in. People want to be part of that.
Well, here's something that you just made me think of when you were saying that. If you think about his music, he obviously was incredibly intense. You can't make that music without putting out fucking yards of energy, volts of energy, right?
Yeah.
Yet you never saw, you look at a guy like a Pete Townsend.
Yeah, he's very different.
Yeah, I mean the
closet homosexual kind of.
Well, just the energy, the manifestation of energy is so apparent.
Yeah.
On one, and not so much at all. It's almost like it was effortless, which clearly it wasn't. You can't do that effortless. It's physically, scientifically impossible to do what he was doing.
But that was just his thing. And just on the other side, I love Pete Townsend, by the way. And I love that Pete Townsend was kind of repressed. That's what made him so angular and so like, because he was fucking holding all this weird shit inside of himself and he was exploding, so he's fucking amazing. My soul naturally speaks, gravitates more towards the Hendrix thing of just like, as a matter of fact, I'm always the biggest thing that I'm always telling people is like, look, I'm a pretty good businessman. I didn't know I was, but the businessman beats up the little weird artist inside of me. And so the more I get to be the weird artist, the better my music's going to be. Because you guys don't want me being the artist who's the greatest at numbers. That's not going to make a record you want to know.
No.
So, and I always think about Hendrix because Hendrix lived a life where he just kind of refused to not be groovy. He was just going to be groovy, and I'm sure had he grown into an older man, a lot of those things would have been challenged. Had he ever had a family, have to have a kid, the groovy stops when you got this other little being's counting on you. But on an artistic level, sitting in that space as much as you can, it just becomes you get better riffs, you get more potent images, your vocal melodies are better because you're just allowing them to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for that fluidity. Mom, most important thing your mom taught you.
My mom taught me a lot. I mean, my folks were just so influential. My mom and the way that she lived and the way that she died taught me how to live. She died in like this beautiful poetic slow motion. She had cancer for 17 years before she finally died. And she was such a spiritual human being towards the end of it that she made me trust I'm not fearful of death. And I'm also not, I think similarly to my father, but in a different way, I'm not worried about life.
That had to make you feel a lot better as the little kid there, having to process and deal with all that.
Well, I think again, that's like you were saying, like, how'd you learn to communicate? I learned to communicate because I thought I was going to fucking die I was in a lot of pain for a long time.
Yeah.
And the way my mom died allowed me to work through pain a lot better because I had to deal with a lot of it. Being a little kid whose mom was dying of cancer is a mind fuck.
Yeah.
And, I have some scarring from that too, stuff I've really had to work through. But I think for the most part, just that living the way she lived, like knowing she was going to die, knowing you're going to die and then living your life, because we all know we're going to die, but we don't like to really think about it. Of
course.
And so we get a little lost in where we're living our life. What are we doing with our life? And a lot of people, we miss our purpose. So my mom showed me how to live through the fact that she didn't have a lot of time on the planet and just tried to live a life of purpose and intention. And, I've really doubled down in the last few years because the one thing, even though I do feel like very spiritual about my music, I think that's kind of why I got really involved with my nonprofit and stuff. I want to do shit where it's not just about Ian Moore. It's not just me going, I'm great and I'm making the world a great place, because it's all reflecting back on me, and my mom inspired me to do all that stuff. She was a very, very giving person that spent her life trying to help people. So.
Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Too many.
Yeah, I know the feeling, man.
Build audio equipment, restored a boat. I'm a beekeeper, love working with wood. I got a new Sprinter for our touring van. So I'm like now obsessed with how to retrofit that to make it solar compatible. Yeah. I mean, the good side is that I love new knowledge. The bad side is that I always have to remind myself that I'm a musician and I need time to
You only
concentrate.
have X amount of time. Yeah, I know.
Yep.
It's tough. It's very tough. Man, I just have one question left for you because, I mean, we've gone over so much stuff. First of all, before I ask you, thank you for everything, man. You've been like just a lovely guy to talk to. And
Oh, man.
I really appreciate it. And you've been really kind and open. And thank you. That was really nice of you to do that.
Well, you set it up, man. It's your tone that allowed. Thank you for taking the time to research the questions and come up with stuff that was conversational and we just a good interview is when you're just bullshitting and then don't mean bullshit, you know what I mean, like just talking.
Yeah, just talking.
And no, thank you, because you set that up. I mean, I always tell people at shows, like, you guys are the ones that allow us to be great, because I played too many shows where I played my ass off and it did make a difference. And same, I've done interviews where I just, if the interviewer is not giving you space to do your thing, you can't do anything. So thank you.
Well, you played your ass off on this show, so thank you. So the last question is, what do you feel has been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years? And how much of that change has been intentional and deliberate, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Well, I think the one thing that I've tried to be, I am humble in a lot of ways. I think I've had my feet on the ground in a lot of ways, but just doing what I did, you just have your head so far up your ass, and like, you're talking about being a better husband, and just trying I am just trying to kind of, especially the last 10 years, I don't want to separate myself from Ian Moore, because I think it's important to still occupy the space of the person that, because you got to be yourself. But just trying to kind of really look at myself and kind of take a hard eye on myself and just try to be cooler, because
cooler as far as more late, not react.
Yeah, that, and also just, it's really easy. Like, I've always been a pretty cool guy, pretty nice person. And it's pretty easy to just kind of sit in the party line and go, I'm a cool guy. I'm a nice person. I'm open-minded. I'm blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you go back and you're like, actually, I'm not really that cool anymore. I'm not that open-minded, and you kind of have to work at it. So, you kind of check in, and, so I guess the last few years, which probably has been somewhat getting older, raising the kids, being in a relationship for a long time, having to work through my own shit, because there's one person that's known me that long where they're like, you're being full of shit. They can call me on it.
It's so, I don't know. I'm so grateful for that, though, man, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think if I just had a series of girlfriends all catching the front end, I'm a pretty romantic dude, fun. I think I'd be back like 20 years back. But all that pain and suffering and challenge that you go through in a relationship has, I think, formed me a lot. I mean, Jolene's really been, and my boys too. Like, they're two dudes that look to me. It doesn't matter if everyone else. I mean, I was thinking that I just flew home, this morning. Was on a red eye, and I was like getting all this love from all these people, and I love it. I love it. It's great. But the bottom line is, these two guys, I'm their dad.
Yeah.
They don't have any other dad. There's nobody else that can ever occupy. They can have mentors. They can have friends. There'll be things, that people will make up for my shortcomings and things I wasn't the best at. But that's the thing. I mean, I just want to be, I'm always trying to think of ways to be, you get it, to be closer to my kids, to be closer to my wife, to make sure I make time. I mean, I'm touring 180 shows a year right now, so I'm gone a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So
that's 220 days out. Yeah.
Yeah.
You coming to Florida?
Yeah, in October.
Are you serious? Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Oh, no, that's in Nashville.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's right, Nashville.
Yeah, it's in Nashville. Nobody ever comes here.
My brother's a promoter now, and he's saying that, like, he's always pitching me, of course it's my brother pitching me. So they're like, well, of course he's your brother. You think he's great. But, I have a feeling him being there will end up playing there a little bit more.
That'd be awesome. And I could tell him some venues here if you want to, and on the in Tampa area anyway. So
yeah.
Hey man, thanks for everything. I really appreciate it. Let me tell people where they could find you and how to support you. First of all, if you've never heard Ian Moore play, you owe it, and you're into guitar at all, you're doing yourself a disservice not to check him out. He's just a great player. That's like so vague. He's a very soulful dude. He's very competent. He's a great writer. He's got a good voice. I mean, he's really got the total package, and he really kicks ass on guitar. That's all I could say. I can't say it any like fucking fancy words. It is what it is. He just kicks ass on the guitar. The new album is called Toronto, the new EP. The EP before that is called Strange Days. He's back to playing more guitar than ever in tours. So go to ianmoore.com. It's IANMOORE.com and buy his records there. Support Ian on tour, his tours. He's got a pretty robust website. He also, check this out. Talk about your songwriting workshop, because this is really cool. You don't have too many people that are, let me say this. You have a lot of people teaching songwriting. You don't have a lot of people teaching songwriting that are actually out there writing songs, playing guitar, and touring the country and doing all that. So he does a songwriting workshop that you don't get a lot of opportunity to learn from a cat that's actually doing it. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. We do, it's once a year. It's a 3-day, 3-day. We just immerse dawn to dusk. And, I don't want to scare anyone off by making it sound too hippy dippy, because it's awesome. And I'm not saying that to sell it. I'm saying it because it's the truth. It's really about, it's a lot heavier than a songwriting thing. I mean, because why do you write songs or not write songs? You don't write songs because you get stuck. How do you get unstuck? You get unstuck by finding ways to be more relaxed, by finding ways to be more cool with yourself. We use the group as kind of the group consciousness to kind of work on everybody individually, because there's so many different types of people. Like, we'll have a couple of kids. We'll have people that do it as a hobby. We'll have professional musicians. We'll have all different types of people. And so we do all this stuff. We work on how to write a bridge, imagery, harmonic content, different rhythms, but really what it comes down to is liberation. And that's what we work on.
I was going to say, knowing you, the little bit I do from this show, a good percentage of your time, I got to believe is going to teach people how to sort of set themselves free.
Yeah, and I have great people that help me. The cool thing is, two of the dudes that play in my band, they both went to Berkeley. They're, kick-ass. They know way more about, theory than I do. And so, Travis will do all this stuff on rhythm, and he's so cool. We call him Redneck Yoda. He will do stuff. He's so engaging, and it's fun and kind of goofy, and people dig it. And then Ben, the guy that plays bass with me, will go into harmonic content and explain little things that, we all know, but things like a relative minor chord. I mean, when you learn that A minor is the relative minor of C, that just is like a kapow moment, and you're like, oh, things like that. And then we have a girl that does yoga, and I cannot tell you how awesome it is to watch awkward dudes try yoga for the first time and think, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I can't believe I went to this stupid songwriting workshop. And then we make them write. And then they go, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. because just in doing that thing, just in stopping, a lot of people are so busy, they're so driven, and they're like, I don't know why I can't write a song. It's like, you're too fucking uptight, dude. You need to chill out. And so they do yoga. And then we have this amazing chef who's cooking meals. And so everything that we do is intentional to show, when you notice the details, you do something great. When you notice the details of what you're putting in your body, when you notice the details of the air and the insects, and it's like all of a sudden you're noticing the bark on the tree. You're a writer. There you go. Bam. That's what writing is, and that's what we focus on. And it's really an amazing team, this year. And we also always choose a really cool place. We're doing it at this place called Mystic Quarry, which is over kind of by Lake Travis in the Texas Hill Country. And there's teepees and outside areas with like fire pits, and it's just a cool vibe. And so it's people are set up to succeed. And then you go back to your insane hectic life, where that's not, unfortunately, what we can all live every day. I wish it was. And then you employ that stuff. And then when you come home and you have 15 minutes to write before your wife wants you to do whatever you got to do, you can key into that stuff.
Very cool, man. And that's going to be in Texas in October.
October, rough draft, I think it's 5th through the 7th. It's whatever that first weekend is.
Awesome. Yep. And they can get details on ianmoore.com?
Yep. I have a link on the website that goes directly to the songwriting workshop.
Great. So check that out. If you're interested in songwriting, you'll be learning from the best, and it sounds like a really good experience. As far as other stuff on his website, there's merchandise. Best place to buy his music, right from his site or on Last Chance Records. And Ian wanted me to mention to please support your local record stores. And I had to kind of twist his arm to do this. All right. So if somebody listening to this has been an Ian Moore fan for a while and you think you might like to take some lessons from him, and you are like an intermediate guitar player, reach out to him through his contact form on his website. He does not have a lot of room. Let me say that again. He does not have a lot of room for doing lessons. He just said he's touring 180 days a year, which means he's out 210, 220. But he does have some downtime here and there, and he is open to working with some people if it's the right fit. So check him out. Anything else I missed, man?
Man, we covered some serious territory. I think
we did.
I think you know more about me than my kids do now.
It's probably good. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks so much again, Ian. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Ian Moore for spending time with us. Go support him at ianmoore.com and come out and see him on tour, and go say hello to him. He'll say hello to you. Go meet him before the show. Give him 5 minutes to decompress before he gets on stage, though. Yep. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list and to get my weekly emails. And remember, most important, happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. Thanks to Ian Moore again, and I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.